I was 17 years old when my parents threw me out of the house, with nothing but a backpack and the clothes on my back. I remember standing in the pouring rain, watching my father's face contort with rage as he screamed at me to leave and never come back. My mother just stood in the doorway, silent tears streaming down her face, making no move to defend me. All because of a lie my brother Tyler told. 15 years passed without a single word from them until last month, when an email appeared in my inbox. They had seen my face on the cover of a national business magazine, and suddenly they missed me and wanted to make amends. No apology, no acknowledgement of what they did. Just a convenient change of heart now that I was successful. But I haven't forgotten. Growing up in Oakwood, Ohio, I had what most people would call a normal childhood. We lived in a blue 2-story house with white trim in a middle-class neighborhood where kids rode bikes in the street and parents gathered for barbecues on summer weekends. My earliest memories are happy ones. Camping trips to Lake Erie Sunday pancake breakfasts, and my dad teaching me to ride a bike without training wheels when I was 6. Mom worked as a dental hygienist, and Dad was a sales manager at a local car dealership. They weren't wealthy, but we had enough. They seemed proud of me back then. I was their first child, their daughter, who brought home perfect spelling tests and won the science fair in 4th grade with a project on water purification. Things changed when Tyler was born. He was 3 years younger with Dad's dimpled smile and Mom's curly hair. From the start, he was special, their miracle baby after Mom had been told she couldn't have more children. I understood why they doted on him, and for years I didn't mind. I loved being a big sister, helping Tyler with his homework, and teaching him how to shoot baskets in our driveway. The first real shift happened when I entered high school. Suddenly, the rules became different for Tyler and me. When I wanted to go to the movies with friends, I needed detailed information about who would be there, what we were seeing, and when I'd be home. I had a strict 10 o'clock curfew. But when Tyler started high school 3 years later, he could come and go with vague explanations about hanging with friends, and often strolled in well after midnight without consequences. My parents justified it by saying, "Tyler's a boy, it's different," or "We learned from being too strict with you." But the double standard stung more each time. I threw myself into academics, joining debate club yearbook committee, and maintaining a perfect 4.0 GPA. My achievements became expected rather than celebrated. When I earned a perfect score on my math SAT, Mom simply nodded and said, "That's nice, honey." But when Tyler got a B- in English, after nearly failing the previous quarter, they took him out for ice cream to celebrate his improvement. The incident with Grandma's crystal vase was when I first saw how deeply unfair things had become. It happened during my sophomore year. The vase was a family heirloom that sat on a pedestal in our living room. One afternoon, I came home from debate practice to find my parents waiting for me, their faces grim. The vase lay shattered on the floor. "What do you have to say for yourself?" Dad demanded. Confused, I shook my head. "I don't know what happened. I just got home." "Tyler said he saw you playing with your softball in the house this morning," Mom said, arms crossed. The accusation was ridiculous. I had been at school since 7:30 that morning for study group. I tried explaining this offering to call my study partners as witnesses, but they had already decided I was guilty. "1 month grounded," Dad announced. "And you'll pay for the vase from your babysitting money." Later that night, I confronted Tyler in his room. "Why did you lie? You know I wasn't even home." He shrugged, not looking up from his video game. "They already yelled at me once this week about my grades. Couldn't take another lecture." Then he glanced at me with an expression that chilled me. "Besides, they always believe me over you anyway." I paid $300 for a vase I hadn't broken and spent a month isolated from my friends. But I kept quiet, hoping if I continued to be perfect, my parents would eventually see the truth. Junior prom should have been one of the highlight moments of high school. Jason Walker, my crush since freshman year, had asked me to be his date. I spent months babysitting to save for a dress, a midnight blue gown that made me feel beautiful for the first time in my life. On prom night, I was putting the finishing touches on my makeup when the doorbell rang. I raced downstairs, excited to see Jason's reaction. He stood in our foyer in a black tuxedo holding a corsage of white roses. But before I could even say hello, Dad stepped between us. "Kitty won't be going to prom tonight," he said coldly. I froze. "What? Why?" Mom appeared beside him. "Tyler told us about the drinking at Melissa's house last weekend. How could you lie to us about studying when you were actually at a party getting drunk?" My stomach dropped. I hadn't been at any party. I'd been at the library with my study group preparing for AP exams, exactly where I said I'd be. "That's not true," I stammered, looking desperately at Jason, who was shifting uncomfortably. "I wasn't at any party. Tyler's lying." "We found the red plastic cups in your backpack," Dad said. "Don't make this worse by lying." In that moment, something snapped inside me. 3 years of unfairness crystallized into pure rage. "You've never given me a chance," I shouted, tears streaming down my face, ruining the makeup I'd spent an hour perfecting. "Everything I do is wrong, and everything Tyler does is right. He broke that vase, not me. He's failing 3 classes while I'm top of mine. I have never lied to you, but you always believe him." The argument escalated quickly. Words came out that couldn't be taken back. "Maybe if you weren't so rigid and cold all the time, we wouldn't be so hard on you," Mom said. "Tyler needs our support." "You've always been independent," Dad added. "We don't worry about you the same way." "You don't worry about me at all," I replied, my voice barely a whisper as Jason backed out the door, mumbling apologies. I watched my prom dream die, along with any illusion that my parents would ever treat me fairly. That night, as I lay in bed still wearing my unworn prom dress, I made a decision. I would focus entirely on getting a scholarship and leaving this house forever. After the prom disaster, I channeled all my energy into school. Social life became secondary to my goal of independence through education. I applied to 12 universities, casting a wide net to maximize my scholarship opportunities. The acceptances started rolling in during the spring of senior year. The State University, with a half-scholarship Baldwin College, with a partial academic award, and Westlake University offering a generous financial aid package. But none of them were enough. Even with part-time jobs, I would still need loans or my parents' financial information for aid applications. I needed something that would cover everything and free me completely. That's when I discovered the Martinson Foundation Full Ride Scholarship. Only 10 were awarded nationwide each year, covering tuition room and board books and even providing a small monthly stipend. The application process was grueling. Essays, recommendations, transcripts, and a final interview for finalists. I worked on my application in secret, knowing my parents would find some way to sabotage it if they knew. On a rainy Tuesday in April, I checked my email between classes and saw the message, "Congratulations, you have been selected as a finalist for the Martinson Foundation Scholarship." My interview was scheduled for the following Thursday at the Foundation's regional office in Columbus. I floated through the rest of the school day in a daze of happiness. This was my ticket out, my chance for a fresh start. When I arrived home that afternoon, the house was eerily quiet. Normally, Tyler would be blasting music or playing video games, but there was only silence. I walked into the kitchen to find my parents sitting at the table, their faces grim. Between them sat a small plastic bag containing what looked like dried herbs. Dad pushed it toward me. "Want to explain this?" My blood ran cold. "What is that?" "Don't play dumb," Mom said, her voice shaking. "Tyler found this in your desk drawer while looking for a calculator." I glanced toward the doorway where Tyler stood, leaning against the frame with his arms crossed. There was something in his expression, not quite a smile, but satisfaction, as if he'd been waiting for this moment. "That's not mine," I said firmly. "I've never seen it before. Tyler must have planted it." "Here we go again, blaming your brother," Dad scoffed. "We didn't raise you to be a drug user, Kitty. What happened to you? First drinking, now marijuana." "I don't drink or do drugs," I protested, my voice rising with desperation. "I'm trying to get scholarships. I'm trying to go to college. Why would I risk that? We found the evidence in your drawer, Mom said. Stop lying. Speaking of college, Dad continued reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a folded piece of paper. With horror, I recognized the Martinson Scholarship finalist notification I had printed and hidden in my journal. Secret applications. Interviews without telling us. Is this why you need drugs, Kitty? The pressure of your lies becoming too much? Give that back, I pleaded. Please. That interview is my chance for a full scholarship. I need it. Dad looked me directly in the eyes as he slowly tore the notification into pieces. We've already called the foundation, Mom said coldly. We told them about finding drugs in your possession. They've rescinded the interview offer. My entire world collapsed in that moment. They hadn't actually called. I would later discover this was a lie, but I believed them completely. Everything I had worked for destroyed in an instant. How could you? I whispered, sinking to my knees. That was my future. Dad stood up, towering over me. You have 1 hour to pack your things and get out of this house. We will not have a drug user under our roof. But where am I supposed to go? I asked, tears streaming down my face. That's not our problem anymore, he replied. You're a disgrace to this family. Mom's words cut even deeper. I can't believe what you've become, Kitty. We gave you everything, and this is how you repay us. I looked at Tyler one last time as I left the kitchen. There was no remorse in his eyes, only the quiet triumph of a boy who had finally eliminated his competition for our parents' attention and love. With shaking hands, I filled a backpack with essentials, some clothes, toiletries, my laptop, and the $300 I had saved from my weekend job at the local bookstore. As I zipped the bag, I realized this might be the last time I would ever see my bedroom. Exactly 1 hour later, I walked down the stairs to find my parents waiting by the front door. Neither of them spoke as I passed. Dad simply opened the door and gestured for me to leave. As I stepped out into the rain, I heard the deadbolt click behind me, the final punctuation on 17 years of family life. The rain soaked through my clothes within minutes as I walked aimlessly down our suburban street. Panic rose in my chest as the reality of my situation hit me. I was homeless. The foundation scholarship interview was supposedly canceled. Every plan I had made for my future was suddenly in shambles. I ended up at the Sunshine Diner, a 24-hour place near the high school. The night waitress Doris took one look at my soaked clothes and red eyes and brought me a cup of hot chocolate without asking. I sat in a booth until morning, nursing the drink and trying not to completely fall apart. When dawn came, I used the diner phone to call the only person I could think of, my best friend, Amanda. We had been friends since elementary school, and her family had always been kind to me. With my cell phone on my parents' family plan, I was afraid they would cut it off at any moment. Kitty, Amanda's groggy voice answered. It's 6 a.m. What's wrong? My composure cracked. Through tears, I explained everything that had happened. 20 minutes later, Amanda's mother's minivan pulled up outside the diner. Mrs. Peterson rushed inside and wrapped me in a hug before I could say a word. You're coming with us, she said firmly. No arguments. The Petersons set me up in their basement. It wasn't fancy, just a pull-out couch, a small bathroom, and a makeshift privacy screen, but it was safe. Mr. Peterson, a school counselor at a neighboring district, helped me understand my rights as a student about to graduate. They can't prevent you from finishing school, he explained. And we need to contact the Martinson Foundation directly. Don't assume what your parents told you is true. I was terrified to call the foundation, certain they would reject me once they heard about the marijuana. With Mr. Peterson beside me for moral support, I finally made the call 3 days after being kicked out. To my shock, they knew nothing about any drug accusation. My interview was still scheduled. Your parents lied, Mr. Peterson said gently after I hung up. They were trying to control you through fear. The betrayal cut deep, but I had no time to process it. I had to prepare for the interview while figuring out how to support myself. I got a job waiting tables at the Sunshine Diner on weekends and started tutoring middle school students after school. Between work, school, and interview preparation, I barely had time to sleep. The day of the interview arrived. I wore a borrowed blazer from Mrs. Peterson and took 3 buses to reach the Foundation's office in Columbus. When the interviewers asked about my achievements and goals, I answered confidently. But when they inquired about my support system, I broke down. Through tears, I told them everything. Being kicked out, living in a friend's basement, working 2 jobs while trying to maintain my GPA. I wasn't seeking pity, but I couldn't pretend anymore that my life was normal. "I'm sorry," I said, wiping my eyes. "I know this is unprofessional." The head interviewer, Dr. Garcia, handed me a tissue. "On the contrary, Catherine, your honesty and resilience are exactly what this scholarship was created to recognize." 2 weeks later, I received the call I had won the Martinson Scholarship. Full tuition room and board books and a monthly stipend for 4 years at Westlake University. It felt like a miracle. I graduated as valedictorian of my class. Standing at the podium in my cap and gown, I searched the audience for my parents' faces out of habit, but of course they weren't there. The Petersons cheered loudly enough for everyone when my name was called. The summer passed in a blur of preparation for college. I worked extra shifts to save money for expenses the scholarship wouldn't cover. Mr. Peterson helped me navigate the legalities of being an independent student. Mrs. Peterson took me shopping for dorm essentials, treating me like a daughter. Move-in day at Westlake University was overwhelmingly exciting. The campus was beautiful with historic brick buildings and sprawling green quads. The Petersons drove me the 3 hours to campus, helping carry my few belongings to my assigned dorm room on the 3rd floor of Willard Hall. As we unloaded the last box from their minivan, I spotted a familiar car pulling into the parking lot. My stomach dropped. A silver Honda with an Oakwood High School sticker in the window, my parents' car. They were here, which could only mean one thing: Tyler was starting at Westlake too. "Oh my God," I whispered, ducking behind the minivan. "It's my parents." Mrs. Peterson followed my gaze and immediately understood. "Go up to your room. We'll finish unloading." I fled to my 3rd floor single room, heart pounding. Through the window, I watched my parents help Tyler carry suitcases and plastic storage bins toward Norton Hall, the freshman men's dorm, directly across from mine. The cruel coincidence felt like a cosmic joke. Of all the universities in Ohio, how had we both ended up at Westlake? Later, I would learn that Tyler had been waitlisted and only accepted late in the summer after another student withdrew. But in that moment, it felt like the universe was determined to deny me a fresh start. For the next week, I lived in constant anxiety, taking roundabout routes to classes and checking around corners before entering the dining hall. I changed my appearance, cutting my long brown hair into a short bob and dyeing it auburn. I started wearing glasses instead of contacts and introduced myself to everyone as Catherine instead of Kitty. 3 weeks into the semester, it happened anyway. I was studying in the library's 3rd floor when someone dropped into the chair across from me. "I almost didn't recognize you," Tyler said, looking me over with curious eyes. "Nice makeover." I froze, textbook half open before me. "What do you want?" He shrugged. "Just saying hi to my big sister. Mom and Dad think you're going to state on loans. They don't know we're at the same school." "Are you going to tell them?" I asked, already calculating how I might transfer if necessary. Tyler leaned back in his chair. "Nah. Not worth the drama." He studied me for a moment. "You really think I planted that weed in your drawer, don't you?" "I know you did," I replied, keeping my voice low. "Just like I know you lied about the party before prom and about Grandma's vase." He had the decency to look slightly ashamed, but it passed quickly. "Water under the bridge now, right? We're both here, starting fresh." "There is no we, Tyler. You made sure of that. Please leave me alone." He stood up, adjusting his Westlake baseball cap. "Whatever you say, Kitty. Or should I say Catherine?" After he left, I sat shaking with anger and fear. My one safe place had been infiltrated. For the rest of freshman year, I lived like a fugitive on my own campus, constantly checking over my shoulder, terrified of running into my parents during family weekend or other events. But strangely, After that first library encounter, Tyler mostly respected my wish for distance. We had one awkward run-in at the campus coffee shop, where he introduced me to his friends simply as an old neighbor from home, and I played along grateful for the anonymity. Academically, I thrived despite the stress. The Martinson Scholarship required maintaining a 3.7 GPA, but I exceeded that, making the dean's list every semester. I found a campus job at the admissions office that worked around my class schedule, allowing me to save my waitressing money for emergencies. I made friends slowly cautious about getting close to anyone. The story I told was simple. I was estranged from my family for personal reasons. Most people didn't push for details. By sophomore year, I had a small circle of trusted friends who knew pieces of my past, though never the full story. While Tyler joined a fraternity and became part of the party scene, I built a quieter life centered around academics and a few close relationships. We existed on the same campus, in completely separate worlds, which suited me perfectly. I saw my parents only once during those years. During junior year, I was crossing the quad when I spotted them sitting on a bench outside the student union, clearly waiting for Tyler. I ducked behind a group of students and took a detour through the science building to avoid them. That near miss reinforced my determination to succeed. Every achievement became another brick in the wall I was building between my past and future. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was laying the foundation for a life completely separate from the family that had discarded me. By junior year, I had settled into a rhythm at Westlake. My business major, with a minor in computer science, kept me busy, and I'd developed close friendships with my study group. Professors knew me as a serious student who always sat in the front row and asked thoughtful questions. Everything changed when I enrolled in Professor Winter's entrepreneurship seminar. She was legendary on campus, a former Silicon Valley executive who had started 3 successful companies before turning to academia. Only 20 students were accepted into her class each semester, and competition was fierce. Business isn't about what you know, she announced on our first day. It's about what problems you can solve that people will pay for. That simple statement shifted my perspective. I'd been approaching my education as a means to secure a safe, stable job, the kind that couldn't be taken away on someone else's whim. But what if I could create something of my own? For our semester project, we had to identify a market need and develop a business concept to address it. I thought about my own educational journey and the obstacles I'd faced. Despite being academically gifted, I had struggled with certain subjects and concepts. What if there was adaptive software that could identify learning gaps and create customized lessons to fill them? I started developing a prototype called LearnSpark, an algorithm that analyzed a student's performance and learning style, then generated personalized educational content. Professor Winters was immediately interested. "You're onto something here, Catherine," she said, after reviewing my initial proposal. "This could revolutionize how we approach educational technology." She became my mentor, meeting with me weekly to refine the concept. Under her guidance, LearnSpark evolved from a vague idea into a viable business model targeting both schools and individual learners. Midway through the semester, Westlake announced its annual innovation competition with a $20,000 prize for the winning startup concept. With Professor Winter's encouragement, I submitted LearnSpark to the competition. That's when I met Jack Russell, a graduate student in computer engineering who had expertise in machine learning algorithms that could enhance my prototype. We were paired together during a networking event for competition finalists. "Your education concept is brilliant," he said, after I explained LearnSpark to him. "But your technical implementation needs work. Want to collaborate?" Jack became both my business partner and eventually my boyfriend. Tall, with unruly dark hair and perpetually smudged glasses, he complemented my methodical approach with creative problem-solving and technical brilliance. We spent countless late nights in the computer lab refining the LearnSpark algorithm and preparing our pitch for the competition. The finals were held in Westlake's grand auditorium. 10 teams would present to a panel of judges that included venture capitalists and successful alumni entrepreneurs. As we waited backstage for our turn, I glimpsed a familiar face among the competing teams, Tyler. My stomach dropped. He hadn't seen me yet focused on his own group's preparations. I hadn't known he was even interested in business, let alone a finalist in the competition. Jack noticed my sudden tension. "Everything okay?" he asked, squeezing my hand. "Just nerves," I replied, turning away from where Tyler stood. When they called our team to the stage, I walked out with confidence I didn't entirely feel. I began our carefully rehearsed pitch about revolutionizing personalized education through adaptive technology. Halfway through my introduction, I made the mistake of scanning the audience and locked eyes with Tyler in the front row. His expression of shock was quickly replaced by a calculating stare that I recognized all too well. For a moment I froze, transported back to that kitchen table with my parents, the marijuana that wasn't mine, sitting between us. The words of my pitch evaporated. But then something unexpected happened. Instead of crumbling, I felt a surge of determination. I wasn't that helpless teenager anymore. I had built something valuable on my own terms. I took a deep breath and continued with even greater conviction, explaining how LearnSpark could identify individual learning obstacles and adapt in real time to help students overcome them. When Jack demonstrated our prototype showing how it created customized learning pathways, the judges leaned forward in their seats. Our closing statement addressed the market potential and implementation strategy. After all 10 presentations, the judges deliberated for 30 minutes. When they returned, the head judge, a venture capitalist from San Francisco, took the microphone. This year's competition featured exceptional innovation across multiple industries, she began. But one team demonstrated not only technical excellence, but also clear market viability and potential for significant social impact. She paused for dramatic effect. The winner of this year's Westlake Innovation Competition and $20,000 prize is LearnSpark. The applause was thunderous as Jack and I returned to the stage to accept the oversized check. Professor Winters beamed from the front row. In that moment, I felt a sense of validation unlike anything I'd experienced before. This wasn't just an academic achievement. It was the beginning of my future. As we left the stage, Tyler approached us. Up close, he looked different than I remembered. More filled out, his boyish features hardened into those of a young man. But his smile was the same casually confident as if we had spoken yesterday. "Congratulations, sis," he said, extending his hand. "Didn't know you were into tech. Pretty impressive presentation." Jack looked between us, confused. I hadn't told him about my brother. "Thank you," I replied stiffly, briefly shaking his hand. "Good luck with your project." Tyler laughed as if we were sharing an inside joke. Always the overachiever. "Listen, I could use some advice on our pitch for next year's competition. Maybe we could grab coffee sometime. I'd love to hear how you developed your idea." The audacity was stunning. After everything he had done, he was treating me like a useful connection, showing no remorse or even acknowledgement of our past. "I'm pretty busy with development now that we've won," I said coldly. "You should talk to the Entrepreneurship Center. They offer mentoring." As we walked away, Jack whispered, "Who was that?" "No one important," I replied. "Just someone I used to know." That encounter with Tyler reinforced my determination to succeed. The $20,000 prize became seed funding for what would eventually become LearnSpark Incorporated. Jack and I spent the summer building a more robust prototype and connecting with potential investors. By senior year, we were running a pilot program in a local elementary school while completing our degrees. The results were promising. Students using our software showed measurable improvement in problem areas within weeks. Professor Winters introduced us to her contacts in the education technology sector, opening doors that would have remained closed to typical college students. We secured an additional $50,000 in angel investment before graduation and made plans to work on LearnSpark full-time after receiving our diplomas. Our personal relationship evolved alongside our business partnership. Jack's patient, analytical nature balanced my driven, sometimes anxious approach. He never pushed me to discuss my family beyond what I volunteered. creating a safe space where I could heal at my own pace. The day I graduated from Westlake summa cum laude with departmental honors, the Petersons drove down for the ceremony. They had remained my surrogate family throughout college, sending care packages and checking in regularly. Mrs. Peterson cried when I crossed the stage. "We are so proud of you, Kitty," she said afterward, using my childhood name that only they still used. I scanned the crowd, automatically spotting my parents in the distance. They had come for Tyler's graduation, of course. Our eyes met briefly across the sea of caps and gowns, but they made no move to approach. I turned back to the Petersons and Jack, focusing on the family I had chosen rather than the one that had rejected me. That summer, Jack and I moved to Columbus to be closer to the education market while keeping costs manageable. We rented a small apartment that doubled as our office, working 16-hour days to build LearnSpark into a viable company. Our startup journey had begun in earnest, with all its challenges and triumphs still ahead. But I had already won something invaluable. The knowledge that I could build something meaningful from nothing, that my worth wasn't determined by my parents' perception, and that family could be created rather than just born into. The first year after graduation tested every limit of our endurance and commitment to LearnSpark. Jack and I worked out of our small apartment, subsisting on ramen noodles and discount coffee, while pouring every dollar back into development. The $20,000 prize money dwindled quickly as we expanded our prototype and prepared for wider testing. Our big break came when the superintendent of Columbus Public Schools agreed to implement LearnSpark in 3 elementary classrooms as a pilot program. Those first months were grueling, constantly fixing bugs, addressing teacher concerns, and refining the user interface. I practically lived at those schools, observing students interact with our software and gathering feedback. "The adaptive reading module is working beautifully," reported Mrs. Johnson, a veteran second-grade teacher. "I've seen improvements in comprehension scores for my struggling readers after just 6 weeks." Data like this became our most valuable asset. With proven results, we secured a spot in Tech Columbus, a prestigious startup incubator that provided office space mentorship and, crucially, introductions to potential investors. Our first significant funding round closed on my 24th birthday, $750,000, from a mix of education-focused venture capitalists and angel investors. We celebrated with actual wine glasses instead of coffee mugs and takeout from a restaurant with cloth napkins. As LearnSpark grew, so did our team. We hired 2 developers to work under Jack's direction and a former teacher to help refine our curriculum modules. I focused on business development, pitching to school districts and educational organizations across Ohio. Jack and I moved into separate apartments, our romantic relationship evolving as our business partnership intensified. The long hours and stress began taking a toll, with disagreements about product directions spilling into our personal time. "We need to prioritize the assessment engine over the new interface," I insisted during one particularly tense development meeting. "Users don't care about sophisticated algorithms if the experience feels clunky," Jack countered. These debates became more frequent until one night over dinner, Jack set down his fork and looked at me with sad resignation. "This isn't working anymore, is it?" he said quietly. "Us, I mean, not LearnSpark." The painful conversation that followed was surprisingly mature. We both recognized that while our vision for the company remained aligned, our personal relationship had become a casualty of our professional ambitions. "I still believe in you and what we're building," Jack said, as we agreed to transition to being just business partners. That hasn't changed. The breakup was amicable, but left me feeling adrift. Work had been my anchor since being kicked out at 17. Without Jack's steady presence in my personal life, I threw myself even more completely into growing LearnSpark. Our big opportunity came when a major education conference selected me to speak about personalized learning technology. My presentation caught the attention of David Mercer, the marketing director for a large educational publishing company. "Your approach to adaptive learning is revolutionary," he said afterward. "Most edtech companies are just digitizing textbooks. You're actually using technology to understand how individual students learn. David became both a valuable business contact and eventually something more. Unlike Jack, who shared my obsessive work habits, David maintained clear boundaries between his professional and personal life. He introduced me to concepts like weekends and vacations that had been foreign to my entrepreneur lifestyle. Our relationship developed slowly. Trust didn't come easily to me anymore, but David's patience and emotional intelligence gradually broke through my defenses. After dating for a year, he proposed during a weekend trip to Lake Erie, coincidentally near where my family had vacationed when I was young. "I know your past makes you cautious about family," he said, holding the ring. "But I'm asking for the chance to build a new one with you, however you want it to look." Our wedding was small and intimate, held in the Petersons' backyard with just 30 guests. Amanda served as my maid of honor, and Professor Winters, who had remained a mentor and friend, gave me away. I hadn't spoken to my parents or Tyler in 7 years at that point, and their absence was a quiet relief rather than a sorrow. LearnSpark continued to expand, moving beyond our initial focus on elementary schools to develop modules for middle and high school subjects. By the 5-year mark after graduation, we had implementations in over 50 school districts across 6 states. The real breakthrough came when the Ohio State Department of Education awarded us a contract to provide our adaptive learning platform to underperforming schools throughout the state. The 3-year, multi-million-dollar deal transformed LearnSpark from a promising startup to an established education technology company. We moved into proper offices in downtown Columbus with a team of 30 employees spanning education specialists, developers, data scientists, and sales staff. Jack led our technology department while I served as CEO, focusing on strategic growth and partnerships. David's marketing expertise proved invaluable as we expanded. His company became one of our distribution partners, packaging LearnSpark with their curriculum materials. Our professional collaboration strengthened our personal relationship, each of us respecting the other's expertise. On our 3rd wedding anniversary, we bought our first house, the Craftsman Bungalow, with a yard big enough for the garden David had always wanted. The stability of a permanent home affected me in unexpected ways. For the first time since being kicked out, I allowed myself to put down roots without fear they would be torn away. "I think I want to start giving back more directly," I told David one evening, as we sat on our new porch swing. "Maybe a scholarship for students who've experienced homelessness or family rejection." He squeezed my hand. "I think that's a beautiful idea. You could change someone's life the way yours was changed." As LearnSpark continued to thrive, I began accepting speaking engagements at education and technology conferences. Our approach to personalized learning was gaining national attention, with research studies confirming the effectiveness of our adaptive algorithms. The culmination of this growing recognition came unexpectedly. Education Innovator, a leading national business magazine focusing on education technology, contacted me about featuring LearnSpark in their annual Companies to Watch issue. "We're actually considering you for the cover story," explained Melissa Keating, their senior editor. "Your personal journey from homelessness to founding a company that's helping thousands of students overcome their own learning obstacles is compelling." I hesitated. While I had shared pieces of my background with close friends and colleagues, I had never publicly discussed being kicked out or the details of my family estrangement. "I'm not sure I want to focus on my personal history," I told her. "The company's impact should be the story." Catherine Melissa said gently, "Your journey is part of why LearnSpark works. You created a solution to a problem you intimately understood, hitting educational roadblocks without support. That perspective is valuable for our readers." After discussing it with David and Jack, I agreed to a limited personal profile alongside the company feature. The interview was more therapeutic than I expected, allowing me to reframe my past as the foundation for my success, rather than just a painful memory. When the magazine hit newsstands, the cover featured me standing in a classroom with the headline, "Education's Tech Revolutionary: How Catherine Evans Turned Personal Adversity into Learning Opportunity for Thousands." The article included a condensed version of my journey from being homeless at 17 to founding LearnSpark, though I had insisted on keeping certain details private. It highlighted the Martinson Scholarship and the Petersons' support without explicitly naming my parents or the reasons they had kicked me out. The response was overwhelming. Emails poured in from educators, students, and parents impressed by both the technology and the story behind it. Several investors reached out expressing interest in our next funding round. LearnSpark's website traffic tripled. David arrived home one evening with a bottle of champagne and the magazine. To my brilliant, resilient wife, he toasted, who's changing education one algorithm at a time. As we celebrated, I felt a sense of closure I hadn't expected. My success wasn't about proving my parents wrong anymore. It was about creating something meaningful from my experiences. The scared, rejected teenager standing in the rain had become a woman who built solutions instead of harboring resentments. I had no idea that 15 miles away, in the suburban home where I grew up, my mother was staring at the same magazine cover, recognizing the daughter she hadn't seen in 15 years. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning as I reviewed quarterly projections with our finance team. A notification popped up on my phone with a subject line that stopped my heart. "We've missed you." The sender, Margaret Evans, my mother. I excused myself from the meeting and locked myself in my office, hands trembling as I opened the message. "Dear Kitty," or Catherine as you go by now, "we saw your article in Education Innovator. Your father and I are so proud of your accomplishments. We always knew you would do great things. It's been too long since we've had any contact and we miss you terribly. We'd love to reconnect and make amends for the past. Please consider reaching out. We're still at the same address and phone number. Love always, Mom." No acknowledgement of kicking me out. No mention of the marijuana accusation. No apology for tearing up my scholarship notification or telling me they'd called the foundation when they hadn't. Just make amends as if we'd had a minor disagreement, instead of them destroying my sense of family and security. My chest tightened until I couldn't breathe. The room spun, and I found myself on the floor gasping for air. My assistant, Jen, found me there 10 minutes later when she came to check why I hadn't returned to the meeting. "Ambulance," I whispered, convinced I was having a heart attack. At the emergency room, the doctor diagnosed a severe panic attack. "Has anything particularly stressful happened today?" she asked, checking my vitals. I laughed bitterly. Just 15 years of family trauma condensed into a 3-paragraph email. David rushed to the hospital, his face pale with worry. I showed him the email on my phone. He read it silently, his expression darkening. "The audacity," he finally said. "After everything they put you through." That night at home, wrapped in a blanket on our couch, I read the email again. The clinical detachment of shock had worn off, replaced by a hurricane of emotions. Anger, confusion, grief, and beneath it all, a traitorous flicker of longing for the parents I'd had before everything fell apart. "What are you thinking?" David asked, sitting beside me. "That I don't know what they really want," I replied. "Is it genuinely about reconnecting, or is it about my success? Would they have reached out if I were struggling instead of on a magazine cover?" Over the next few days, I drafted dozens of responses, ranging from scathing rejections to cautious openness. I deleted them all. This wasn't a decision to make in the heat of emotion. I scheduled an emergency session with Dr. Miller, the therapist I'd been seeing since LearnSpark's early days. "There's no right answer here," she said after I explained the situation. "The question is, what do you want, regardless of what they want or deserve?" I honestly didn't know. Part of me wanted to ignore the email entirely. Another part wanted to respond with the full force of 15 years of accumulated pain. A small, childlike voice still wanted my parents to love me the way they once had, or the way I believed they had before Tyler became the favorite. "They've been sharing your magazine article with everyone," Amanda told me, when I called her for perspective. She still lived in our hometown, and occasionally heard local gossip. "Mom ran into your mother at the grocery store last week. She was showing the magazine to the cashier, saying how they always supported your dreams and how you were always so independent." The revisionist history made my blood boil. Independent. They kicked me out with nowhere to go. I know Amanda sighed. It's like they've created this alternate reality where they're the proud, supportive parents who launched you to success. 2 weeks after receiving my mother's email, as I still deliberated over my response, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Something made me answer instead of letting it go to voicemail. Hello, Kitty. It's Tyler. I nearly hung up. The sound of his voice catapulted me back to that kitchen, the smirk on his face as our parents confronted me with the marijuana he had planted. What do you want? I asked coldly. I was hoping we could talk, he said. It's been a long time. His voice sounded different, less confident, more worn. I learned he was 32 now, recently divorced with joint custody of a 5-year-old daughter. He worked in sales at a technology company in Cincinnati, though business had been difficult lately with layoffs looming. I saw your magazine cover, he said. Pretty impressive, sis. Don't call me that, I replied automatically. We haven't been siblings in a very long time. There was a pause. Yeah, about that. Look, I know I was a terrible brother. The things I did when we were kids. I don't expect you to forgive me. The acknowledgement shocked me into silence. In all my imagined confrontations with my family, I'd never pictured Tyler admitting his role. Mom and Dad have been talking about you constantly since that article came out, he continued when I didn't respond. They've got this whole story they tell about how they always knew you were destined for great things. That's not what happened, I said tightly. No, it's not, he agreed, surprising me again. They kicked you out for something I did. Something I planted in your room because I was failing 3 classes and needed a distraction. The admission I'd wanted for 15 years landed without the satisfaction I'd expected. It felt hollow, too little, too late. Why are you calling now, Tyler? What do you really want? He sighed heavily. Honestly, Mom and Dad asked me to reach out as part of their reconciliation plan. They've been talking about reconnecting with you for weeks. I think they're struggling more than they let on. Struggling how? Financially, he admitted. Dad's dealership closed last year. They had to downsize to an apartment. Mom's still working at the dental office, but they're not in great shape for retirement. And there it was. The real motivation behind the sudden desire to make amends after 15 years of silence. They'd seen my success and calculated its potential value to them. So they sent you as a scout, I said bitterly, to see if I might be willing to support them. That wasn't my idea, Tyler said quickly. But yeah, I think that's part of it. For what it's worth, I really am sorry for what I did. Having my own kid has made me realize what an awful person I was to you. After we hung up, I sat in my home office staring at the family photos on my wall, David and me on our wedding day, the Petersons at our housewarming Professor Winters at LearnSpark's 5-year anniversary celebration. The family I had built from the ashes of the one that rejected me. I finally composed a brief email to my mother. I received your message. I'm willing to meet once in person at a neutral location. I'll be in Ohio visiting friends next month and can make time then. I suggested a restaurant in our hometown and a date signing at Simply Catherine. Her reply came within minutes, enthusiastically accepting. She added, Your father and I can't wait to see you. We have so much to catch up on. No mention of Tyler's call or their financial situation. Just the continued pretense that we were a normal family who had drifted apart rather than one fractured by betrayal and abandonment. As the meeting date approached, my anxiety intensified. David insisted on accompanying me, protective of both my emotional well-being and wary of what my parents might really want. We'll get a hotel, he said firmly. No staying at their place or any extended visits. One dinner, that's it. And we leave if it becomes too much. I prepared myself as I would for the most challenging business negotiation, thinking through various scenarios and planning my responses. But nothing could fully ready me for seeing my parents in person after 15 years of absence. The night before our meeting, I barely slept, plagued by dreams of standing in the rain outside my childhood home. In the morning, I dressed carefully in a professional outfit that projected confidence and success without being ostentatious. David squeezed my hand as we drove to the restaurant. "Remember," he said, "you're not that helpless teenager anymore. You're Catherine Evans, CEO of LearnSpark, and the most resilient person I know. Whatever happens in there doesn't change that." I took a deep breath and stepped into the restaurant prepared to face the family that had once thrown me away, now suddenly eager to claim connection to the successful woman I had become without them. The restaurant, an upscale Italian place called Bellissimo, had opened years after I left town. Its neutral territory gave me a small sense of security as David and I arrived 15 minutes early to settle my nerves. "You look beautiful," David reassured me, squeezing my hand under the table as I obsessively straightened my silverware. I had chosen a navy blue dress that projected professional confidence without being intimidating. My hair was styled in a sleek bob, and I wore the pearl earrings David had given me for our anniversary. I wanted to look successful but not unapproachable, a delicate balance for a reunion 15 years in the making. At exactly 7 o'clock they arrived. My father entered first, thinner than I remembered, his once dark hair now completely gray. My mother followed her face, showing the soft lines of late middle age but still recognizably the woman who had watched silently as I was thrown out of my home. Behind them came Tyler, looking uncomfortable in a dress shirt that strained slightly across his shoulders. Time seemed to slow as they approached our table. I rose automatically, years of business etiquette overriding my emotional paralysis. "Kitty," my mother breathed, moving, as if to hug me. I subtly shifted my posture, extending my hand instead. "It's Catherine now," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "This is my husband, David." Awkward handshakes followed. My father's grip was weaker than I remembered. Tyler nodded at me with an expression I couldn't quite read, something between shame and resignation. "You look wonderful," my mother said as we all took our seats. "Success agrees with you." "Thank you," I replied, falling back on practiced social pleasantries. "How have you both been?" What followed was 30 minutes of the most surreal small talk I'd ever experienced. My parents spoke about their downsized apartment, so much easier to maintain their church activities, and neighbors I no longer knew. They asked surface questions about LearnSpark, and nodded with exaggerated interest at my brief explanations. Not once did they mention the circumstances of our estrangement. It was as if they were following an unspoken script for a different reunion, perhaps one where their daughter had simply moved away for career opportunities and lost touch. Tyler remained mostly silent, occasionally making eye contact with me when our parents said something particularly detached from reality. The waiter brought our entrees, and as we ate, my mother finally broached the topic of my magazine feature. "We were so proud when we saw you on that cover," she said, smiling broadly. "Everyone at church was impressed when I brought it in. My daughter, the successful CEO," something in me snapped. 15 years of silence, and now she was showing off my accomplishments to her friends as if she'd had any part in them. "Did you tell them you kicked me out when I was 17? I asked, setting down my fork. "Did you mention that the last time you saw me, Dad was calling me a disgrace while you stood by and did nothing?" The table fell silent. My father's face hardened into the stern expression I remembered from my youth. "That's ancient history, Kitty," he said dismissively. "Families have disagreements. We've always believed in you." "Disagreements," I repeated, incredulous. "You threw me out with nowhere to go. You told me you'd called the Martinson Foundation to cancel my scholarship interview. You tore up my finalist notification in front of me. You were going down a dangerous path," my mother interjected. "We did what we thought was best at the time." "A dangerous path," I echoed. "Because of marijuana that mysteriously appeared in my drawer." All eyes turned to Tyler, who stared down at his plate. "Tyler already told me he planted it," I continued. "Just like he lied about the vase and the party before prom, and every other time you chose to believe him over me." My father waved his hand as if batting away an annoying insect. "Kids make mistakes. Tyler was young. We've all moved past that now." "Have we?" I asked. "Because this is the first time in 15 years you've reached out to me. If I wasn't on the cover of a magazine, would we be sitting here right now?" My mother reached across the table toward me, but I pulled my hand away. "We always meant to contact you. she insisted. We just didn't know how. You changed your name, moved away. I was homeless at 17, I said quietly. The Petersons took me in. They came to my college graduation. They helped me start my life over after you destroyed it. Where were you? That's not fair, my father said, his voice rising slightly. We gave you everything growing up. One disagreement. Being kicked out isn't a disagreement, David interjected, his normally gentle voice firm. It's abandonment. And it wasn't over nothing. It was over a deliberate lie. He turned to Tyler. A lie you've apparently admitted to. Tyler finally looked up, his face flushed. I did plant the weed, he acknowledged. I was failing out of school and knew they'd be furious. I needed a distraction. He glanced at our parents. And I knew they'd believe me over Kitty. They always did. My mother's eyes filled with tears. We didn't know, she whispered. You didn't want to know, I corrected her. You chose the version of reality that was easiest for you, just like you're doing now, pretending we're one big, happy family who can just pick up where we left off. What do you want from us? My father asked, frustration evident in his voice. An apology. Fine, we're sorry. We made a mistake. Is that what you need to hear? His words were right, but his tone conveyed only annoyance at having to say them, not genuine remorse. What I needed was parents who believed in me. I said, feeling a strange calm descend as years of unspoken truth finally emerged. What I needed was a family who didn't throw me away because it was convenient. What I needed was support when I had nowhere to go. And now my mother pressed. What do you need now? The question hung in the air. What did I need from these people who were essentially strangers wearing my parents' faces? Now I need honesty, I replied. So let me ask directly, why did you really reach out after all this time? My parents exchanged uncomfortable glances. Tyler stared at his water glass. We saw your success, my mother began carefully, and we realized what a mistake we'd made. We want to be a family again. Dad's dealership closed last year, Tyler added bluntly. They're struggling financially. Mom's dental office cut her hours. They've been talking about how family should support each other ever since they saw your magazine cover. My father shot Tyler a furious look. That's not the only reason, he insisted, but his protest sounded hollow even to him. You know, I said, a sad smile forming, I actually came here tonight wondering if reconciliation might be possible. I thought maybe, just maybe, you had genuinely reflected on what happened and wanted to make amends. I looked at each of them in turn. My father defensive and proud even in difficulty. My mother teary, eyed but still avoiding responsibility. And Tyler, the golden child whose lies had shaped all our lives. I forgive you, I said finally. Not for your sake, but for mine. Carrying this anger has taken enough of my energy. My mother's face brightened. So we can start fresh. We could come visit you in Columbus, see your company. No, I interrupted gently but firmly. Forgiveness doesn't mean pretending nothing happened. It doesn't mean I want you in my life under false pretenses. I've built a good life without you. A loving marriage, a successful company, and a chosen family who supported me when you didn't. But we're your real family, my father protested. Family isn't just biology, I replied. It's showing up. It's believing in someone even when it's difficult. It's something you earn. I reached for David's hand. I need to go now. I've said what I came to say. That's it, my mother asked, fresh tears spilling. After 15 years. I'll consider limited contact moving forward, I said, standing. But only with complete honesty about the past and present. No more pretending we're something we're not. My father's expression hardened. And what about our financial situation? You're doing well for yourself. Don't you think you owe us something after all we did raising you? And there it was, the real reason for the reunion laid bare. I don't owe you anything, I said quietly. But I will do something not for you, but for kids like me. 3 months after that dinner, I established the Peterson Family Scholarship Foundation, named after the family who had taken me in when I had nowhere else to go. The foundation provides full scholarships and living stipends for homeless and at-risk teens in Ohio, with special consideration for those estranged from their families. We launched with $5 million of my own money and contributions from LearnSpark's Corporate Social Responsibility Fund. The first year, we supported 20 students, young people with potential but without support, just as I had been. My biological family and I maintained minimal contact after that dinner. My mother occasionally sends emails with local news or family updates, which I politely acknowledge. My father's pride prevented him from reaching out again after I declined to directly support them financially. Tyler and I exchange brief messages on birthdays, maintaining a distant but civil connection. The Peterson Family Scholarship just celebrated its 5th anniversary. At the gala fundraiser, Mrs. Peterson, now in her 70s, embraced me with tears in her eyes. "You've turned your pain into something beautiful," she whispered. Among our newest scholarship recipients was a 17-year-old girl named Zoe, who had been living in her car after her parents kicked her out for coming out as gay. Watching her accept the scholarship, seeing the mix of hope and determination in her eyes, I recognized the same fire that had kept me going at her age. After the ceremony, she approached me shyly. "Miss Evans, I just wanted to say thank you. This scholarship, it saved my life." "I know exactly what you're going through," I told her something I rarely admitted to others. 15 years ago, I was in your position. Her eyes widened. "Really? But you're so successful now." "Success is the best revenge," I said with a smile. "But it's not enough by itself. The real healing comes from breaking the cycle, from taking what hurt you and transforming it into something that helps others." As David and I drove home that night, I reflected on the long, winding path that had led me from that rainy night at 17 to the life I now lived at 32. "Do you ever regret not having a closer relationship with your parents?" David asked gently. "Even after everything?" I considered the question carefully. "I regret not having the parents I deserved," I answered honestly. "But I don't regret maintaining boundaries with the parents I actually had. Some relationships can't be fixed. They can only be understood and then released." The greatest lesson I've learned through all of this is that family isn't determined by blood, but by choice and action. It's found in the people who stand by you when you have nothing to offer but yourself. It's built through trust, respect, and consistent support, all things that can't be claimed, only earned. My parents chose to believe the easier lie 15 years ago, and they're still choosing comfort over truth today. But that's their journey, not mine. My path forward isn't about forgetting what happened, but about using that experience to create something meaningful, both in my own life and for others who face similar challenges. The scared 17-year-old girl standing in the rain has become a woman who understands her own worth, isn't dependent on others' validation. That's a kind of freedom. No success, no magazine cover, and no amount of money could ever provide. What about you? Have you ever had to create boundaries with family members who hurt you? Or have you found your chosen family more supportive than your biological one? Comment below with your experiences, and if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you the strength to transform your own painful experiences into purpose and healing.